Good morning. Just waiting for a couple of you to come into the chat box so I can see. Hi, Joel. Oh, Sandy, not Joel. Well, say hi to Joel. Good morning. Glad you're here. We'll wait for a few others to come into the chat box, and then we'll get started on our project today. Hi, Kyla. Kind of still getting a few things a little bit organized here. So, oh, drizzly, Southern California. Well, that's good. I'm glad you're getting at least some moisture. We just have a little bit of overcast today. No rain predicted. So I'll be able to go to grandkids' Little League games and or T-ball and have fun doing that. Hi, Denise. And Sonia, good morning, good morning. All right, I'm going to get going here with, what we're going to be doing today and in the weeks ahead. Now, we have 5 patterns of a New York beauty block, all a little bit different. 2 that are fairly dramatic in their points, and that's what really gives a New York beauty its distinction and in its beauty, really. And it's really recognized for its points, and it came about during the early 1800s, but it really wasn't named New York Beauty until the early 1900s. And so there's really no proof that anybody has found that it was named New York Beauty because of the Statue of Liberty or because of after the city itself. New York at that point in time was really known for its, where beauty came from, all of the trends. It was kind of like one of the great cities. So that's as close as we come to that, which I had always thought it was New York Beauty because of Statue of Liberty and the city of New York. So that was kind of interesting to learn a little bit about that. And it was influenced, and that they do know, by Native American art and European folk art as well. So a combination of those two, of the Europeans that came here and the Native American. And right now it's kind of having a revival, and that's why chose it as a part of what we're going to be doing for the next 5 weeks. So with that, you have 5 patterns. Hopefully you've been able to download them already and get that taken care of. Now 2 have very distinctive points to it, and the very first one is probably the most dramatic one with points. They're large, and they really show up. And if you saw Kristen's quilt, let me see if I can bring that up. If you can see down at the bottom right of the picture, that is the one that we're going to start with. And that one has, very strong, very, dynamic points. The top left, also very dramatic. The others are a little bit more, I guess not so dramatic. So, anyway, what I think you need to be thinking about is how you're going to design your quilt. Because this is kind of making up your own as we go along, because as we work with each of the blocks, if you need more than one, you can work on several of the same blocks. So you might want to be starting your design, and you can copy off the patterns and rearrange them and work with them. I do that often. If you want to see it in the color, you could copy off the picture from the quilt show of Kristen's design and work a little bit with that to see how many blocks of which one you want and where you want them. So that's a possibility for you there. So, and then each week I'm going to be talking about some different techniques and different things that we can do with it. So we may or may not do a whole block each week, but we'll do a portion of it. So today I want to talk about the things that you need and get you started on paper piecing that arc that has 6 separate blocks in it. And let me just see. Kathy, you're going to find hopefully that it is that this is not going to be difficult or beyond what you can do. I'm going to do my best to make it as simple for you as we can, and that's why we're doing it together. And we designed, a few of these are a little tougher than others. But let me share with you, if you would like to start, if you've never made a New York beauty block before, I do have under my Learn section on the Quilt Show, I have done a simple New York beauty block, a getting started one. It's from Alex Anderson's paper piecing book, beginning paper piecing, and I did a whole program on that. So you might want to go back and watch that. I'm going to be doing, obviously, a lot of the same things, but that was with a very simple block that you could find and copy, and the pictures and everything in the book are absolutely wonderful. So let's get started. Let me drop you down to the... So I have the things that I'm going to need for this block. I have a pencil. I have freezer paper to copy my templates that I'm going to be using. I've already done that, so I'll show you how I go about doing that. I use a light box, or you can use a window. It's visible enough, as you can see through the paper, that you don't even need either one, but we have them if possible. I have the first arc that we're going to be working on today ready to go, and I also have my second arc, and because it came in two parts, I want you to see that I cut it apart, taped it. I didn't tape over the sewing line, simply because I didn't want that in my sewing. And I taped those two pieces together so that we would be ready to work on those. I went ahead and cut my pieces that I am going to be using, my 6 pieces. And again, we talked about this last week, but because of all these fabrics being close to the same value and kind of falling into that category, which is one of the reasons why we chose this, and it's going to make a beautiful quilt, is because of that. And so the value is going to come in more the color and the intensity of the depth of color. So you can kind of see that these are a little bit lighter, obviously, than these. So we've got that. I've got my Carol Dokes foundation paper that I made my patterns from, but I'm going to use this card for the folding, and this is an amazing tool. If you don't have it, I'm sure that today John is with us, and he'll put up a link to the quilt shop, and you can get an add a quarter ruler. If you don't have one, you don't need it. I'll show you how to cut without it, but if you do paper piecing, this is absolutely fabulous. And so I taped my pattern together. I just saw Hillary put up that she uses a glue stick. Don't use too much because it warps the paper. She's right. And part of it is that sometimes it pulls apart, and if I do a pattern, days before, and it's hot outside, it's hot in my house, I just, the masking tape works really well for me because I can see through it. It doesn't go over, it holds it. But glue stick does work well, and if your glue stick works for you, great, use it. Always use, those things that work. So on my pattern, I'm going to move this aside for a moment. We have the letter C and the letter A. And on your freezer paper, you're going to cover it, and you're going to want to draw your line including your seam allowance. So simply draw that line with seam allowance. If you want to draw the other line simply because, go for it. Label it C and pattern number 1. And that's what I have done here. So I'm going to move these aside because I don't need another pattern. So I have C and A drawn with seam allowance and cut out. And so let me just make sure that there is no question, all right, or comment. And please do comment, ask the questions on there. I will check it periodically as we go through and make sure that I'm answering your questions. So far, what you're going to do is choose your fabrics, gather your materials. Most important is your @1/4 ruler, your pattern cut apart, a piece of junk mail or the Carol Doak foundation paper cardboard that comes in your packet, which is what I use, and your pattern taped or glued together, and possibly another ruler. All right, let's talk a little bit about the pattern itself. I'm going to use a smaller ruler. I think it fits on my space a little bit better. To decide how big I am going to cut my fabric, I measure the largest, the width of the largest part of what I need, and this is 1 1/8, and the smallest as well, and that's right at 3/4 of an inch, and then the height of it. So I have 1.5 inches for height. I cut, because it's 1 1/8, I'm going to cut it probably 2 1/4 by, and this is 1.5, so I'm going to cut it by probably 2 1/2. And so that's kind of what I've done. And with these pieces so that they cover this, and I cut about 1 inch larger instead of the 1/2 inch, which many patterns tell you to cut, because especially with the New York Beauty, because of all the angles and stuff. And I would rather waste a little bit more fabric than have to recut fabric and not have it fit, and or cut off and not have the correct angle to it. So to get started with the New York Beauty, and I'm gonna work from the left side to the right side. So the first piece that I'm going to have, when you put it on the back side of your fabric, the only piece, whenever you start a new grouping of pieces, is that you have your first piece face up. And so I've got just a little over 1/4 of an inch there, so I'm going to cover that first piece with my fabric, and I can see that I have more than enough room of fabric where it's going to come, and then my second piece is going to go face down. Now I can pin these to hold them in place, which, if you haven't done this before, I would highly recommend. When it's a piece this small, I generally don't, but I would recommend that you hold it together in some way, and you can use the glues, etc. And so I don't necessarily need to sew this outside edge, but I do want to have enough room, and I need to move my pin because I put it too close. All right, let me see. I'm seeing that a link for the New York Beauty patterns. If John can, he can put those up. What about stable stuff? Poly, yes, Linda, go ahead and use it. You can leave that in. Right onto the Carol Doak foundation paper. Yes, perfect. That's exactly what you should do. Where do I find the patterns? They are, we'll see if John can find a link, but if you go to the Quilt Show and go to Saturday Sampler, and the link should be there. And so let's go back to the sewing machine. So I've got them put, and you always sew to the next one. So if this is pattern, if this is number 1, this is number 2. So I am going to sew between 1 and 2. And I watched a show that Alex did a few, about probably a good month ago now. And she talked about that machines are set for garment sewing, and that 2.0 would be a good for quilting, and then you don't get those pieces that, you know, your thread doesn't come apart at the ends. So I've been doing that, and I love it. And so I would highly recommend that, or go back and watch Alex's show where she talks about her favorite things about sewing, you know, her machine. And so I'm sewing at 2.0. And I'm sewing directly on that line. All right. So now I have block number 1 and block number 2 sewn together. I'm going to do as I always do. I'm going to press that out. And now here comes the where I'm going to use the paper, my add a quarter. And so I want to fold that back onto paper. I use my add a quarter ruler, and it butts right up to that, and I'm going to trim that away to get rid of that excess fabric and bulk, and then is when I would normally press that. Now I've got my first 2 pieces there. From here on out, I'm going to go to my next, so now 2 and 3, and I'll be sewing on the line between 2 and 3. So I'm going to put my paper, fold it back, and I would normally use my add a quarter, but you can also use a regular ruler. Get that in there. Put it at your 1/4 of an inch and trim it. And you can see why that 1/4, add a 1/4 ruler is just fabulous, because it goes right up there and it makes it quick and painless, if you will. So now I have, I'm getting ready for number 3. And now I can line up the edge of number 3 and 2. And again, you can drop a pin to hold it in place if you wish, or you can be wild and crazy and do what I do and stick it right under there. And I've sewed that piece on, and I have it at the 1/4 of an inch. So I'm simply going to run my iron along the seam, press it down so I have it nice and flat, come back, put my foundation, my paper, I'll fold it back, and I'm not going to do that. I'm going to put my ruler there first. Catch myself. I've done that before. It's not fun, because then I have to take out, pick, and get my next piece of fabric, right sides together, making sure that it fits right along there. I start, a stitch or so off because the paper will, tear, and I'd rather have it, a couple stitches off so it doesn't unravel for me. Alright. Strings bug me. So again, I am going to fold this back. Take my piece of junk mail card, my Carol Doak, and I make sure I see my black line so that I have and then go with my next piece, right sides together, and I'm sorry because you didn't see any of that. I forgot to move my camera. My apologies. But I've got one more time to show you, and I will change the camera. So again, sewing on the next between 4 and 5 that time. And press that down, come back, and now I'm going to I'll be ready for my last one. I do leave a little bit of the black because it's going to go over the card, and as far as accuracy is concerned, that's that'll keep me fairly accurate. And you can see that I have an extra bit of, I did cut mine generous. And so if you are a slow stitcher, there's some pieces that would fit into slow stitching, or, applique, whatever. So here's my last piece, number 6. And I put that in, again, pin if you desire to hold it in place. A quick bit with your glue stick, which comes in handy. That'll keep everything in place as well. And so right on that line, all right. Again, my last press, and now I have my 6 pieces sewn together, and now I can cut along my outside pieces so that Let me grab my ruler. Anytime that I have a straight edge that I can cut on, I'm going to do that. Please don't forget about your seam allowance. And so your 1/4 inch line should be on the black line, your 1/4 inch out there. And let's trim this up. And now, you know, you can do this with the scissors. I'm going to be brave and take my rotary cutter and, you know, slowly and carefully get rid of my 1/4 inch on my curves. And so now I have my first arc completed with my paper piecing. Now the question here becomes, I'm going to leave, I generally leave my paper on until I have all my parts complete, and then I will remove the paper. And there's a couple of different things that you can do to remove the paper easily. If you're not using the poly that you would leave in to this, either the Quilter Select one or Ricky Tims's. And so one way that people are you know, getting into taking their paper out is running a bit from one of these water pens. And so the water just makes the paper come off real easily. And so you can put the water on there and it kind of dissolves it and it pulls up really nicely. If you don't want to use the water, I take the back side of my seam ripper and run it right along the edge of my sewing, and the paper basically just pulls off. Then, you know, the next one comes out, and if I've done that, I can do the same thing again. But this Carol Doak paper just pulls out so easily. And you can see where I use the water pen, and it just basically falls off. So the water pen is another option for you, or the back side of that. So I have my first arc done. And before we call it, we're going to be working on the next one. And I have chosen my fabrics. I made a block already this week, and so this was my practice block that I made. And so there you will see it. You see it sewn together. And so this is my A piece. This is my small B piece. That's very small one. These are my points, and this is going to be my background. So now what I need to do is go back and get my pieces cut for my E's, which is my background, and my D's, which are my points. And so if I, you know, depending on where I start on my fabric and where I, you know, want to cut them, I am going to again measure from the widest point, which is about 3 inches. So I'm going to cut it 4 inches wide, and it's about 3 inches long at its longest point to cover that. So it's going to be a 4 by 4 square for that first E. And then for this D, at the, the width of it is about 2 2 1/8. So I'm going to probably cut it at least 3, an inch bigger would be 3 1/8. I'd probably go 3 1/2. And the longest point for this is probably along here. And is about 4 inches from, 4 1/4. So I would probably cut it 5 1/4, 5 1/2. So 4 inches by 5 1/2. The other thing that I want to say to you is that we really want these pieces out here to be as much on the straight of grain as possible. So when I cut my pieces, I'm going to keep in mind of where they're going to lay on, on my pattern, because when I cut this piece out, I want to make sure that when I come up to that point that I'm on straight of grain of fabric. So I'm going to cut that way. It normally comes out that way unless this was a solid piece. And you're going to have a couple of the blocks that this large arch on the outside is a solid piece. You would want to make sure that you would lay it on straight of grain so that it's stabilized on the outside corners for sure. Let me go to the chat box and see if there are questions using the Stable Stuff product. The Stable Stuff, Ricky has a video that talks about how to use it, but you simply, you can copy your pattern onto the Stable Stuff, and you would use it exactly the way you would this, Carol Doe paper. The difference with that is you can leave it in your pattern. You do not have to remove the paper or the Stable Stuff. And it adds a little bit of, texture or stability to it. And when you wash it, part of it washes away, so you don't really feel it very much in there. So I would suggest, you find Ricky Tim's video on that, and it would be on the Quilt Show, and check that out. The packaging has directions on it as well, but basically you use it exactly the same way. The narrow pieces are making nice stems for my pick-a-pedal. Oh, well, there your 30-year project. I like that. Do you start sewing past the top and bottom seam line into the seam lines? I do, because I want that extra so that when I'm tearing the paper, I'm not losing stitches in my work. And so I think it's however you want to do. And John has put up links to different things. Freezer paper over the Stable Stuff poly. Freezer paper just for the patterns. Yes, I wouldn't use Stable Stuff for making a template. I would use freezer paper because I can iron that on there and keep it, but I suppose you could do that with Stable Stuff too, but I'm just making a template, so I tend to use the freezer paper. Could not get my copies to match the 1-inch register. Close but not exact. The issues that it causes is that the points and your blocks won't come in there. You can adjust your printer to get that 1 inch. Or again, you could take it to a copy place and they could get it to the exact inch if you don't know how to do that on your printer. But I'm sure that you could Google that and find out how you can adjust your printer so that you could get that 1 inch. Where do I find the patterns? I think John has put some links up, but it's under D Saturday Sampler, under the Learn along the top of the box. Right on the paper. So check the links that John has put up. I'm not going to take the time to do that right now. So for today, this is what we're going to, for the homework for this week, go ahead, make your templates for A and C, cut those out and have those ready to go. Go ahead and cut your pattern pieces here and make this arch. For that, go ahead, measure each of these by its longest and widest point and add an inch to that, and have those pieces all prepared. We'll go through these, very steep angles, as that's what I call them, steep angles, and we'll sew those together next week, and I will show you how to sew the arches together to create your pattern. So today was getting you started on the basic techniques of doing paper piecing and the equipment and the things that you need for that. Go ahead and hopefully you've already chosen your fabrics, so measure each one of these. If you need to, write on each one as you measure them how big of a piece that you're going to cut. Your E's are your background, your D's are your point, and then I would suggest for block number 2 that you have it downloaded. If you need to tape it, separate it, do any of that you have that completed, and choose your fabrics. That'll make next week Margaret, let me see. A couple of things I saw popping up here. Yes, Cheryl, I'm sewing. I'm going to show you how to sew the sections together next week, because that's that arch sewing on a curve, and we'll do that next week. Please show my sample again. Okay, here it is that I've sewn together. So next week I'm going to show you how to sew the curves here, and get these sharp angles with the points for putting that in. That'll go quickly once we have it all cut. And so we'll have block number 1 completely sewn together for next time, and block 2 started. Let's see. Please show your sample. Why do we have to trace? Can we just sew it on the foundation paper? No, you would need to make a pattern, because you're going to cut it apart and you're going to sew it as a separate piece to that, and directly on the foundation paper. You need your fabric. So what I do with those pieces, let me see if I can find them here. So for C, because it is on freezer paper, I have the shiny side. I would put it on there, iron it on, and cut around it and remove the freezer paper so that I have my piece that gets sewn in right here. Okay? And so I'm not sure, I don't think you can do it any other way unless I'm totally mistaken on that. And I don't see that option. So how will that help, though? Doubt my copy store will watch the video. I'm not. Michelle says, I don't have a printer. Are you going to show how to sew that? Michelle, how will that help? Doubt my copy store will watch the video. They don't need to. All you have to do is take the paper, or if someone else has a copier, or you can take these to your the printer store, and the Carol Doe paper. Sometimes they won't print it onto the Carol Doe paper, but you can use the thinnest, cheapest copy paper so that it's thinner and it's easier to cut out. But they will print these sheets for you, and they will measure and get it to the 1 inch if you do not have a printer and you need to go and have them copied. So hopefully as far as the patterns are concerned, if you don't have a printer, because you would have to print out I think that you can download the pattern from your computer to a thumb drive and take that to the copy place, and they would do it that way. They would use your thumb drive and just simply print out the pattern. And that's the other thing, if you have a friend with a printer. Okay, different people are giving you ideas. They will be concerned about the paper. That's why I said just have them use, the cheapest paper. And you can copy the templates onto freezer paper using an inkjet printer. Yes, you can do that too. I just simply cut out the freezer paper because then I'm not using a whole sheet of freezer paper in my printer. It's just... Okay, lots of people are giving you thumb drive again. Better late than never. Don't want to miss the classes. The copy guy was not experienced enough. All those things are true. And probably the best thing that I would tell you, Michelle, is that I would see if a friend could download it and copy it for you. If someone that you know has a printer. Okay, so they did print on your Carol Doe paper. Okay. All right. That will be what we do for today. And next week, have your materials ready for block number 2. Go ahead and measure for your points for number 1 and have those pieces of fabric cut out. And I will show you curved piecing. We'll put the pattern number 1 together. And so next week, our main technique that we're working on is curved piecing. So I hope this has been a good start for you. Again, if you have any questions whatsoever, my email address is right there on the screen. Please email me or put it in the forum and we'll answer your questions there. And we'll get this going, and very excited for it. And also kind of get an idea of where you're going to go with your design of your quilt. And that will work as well too. So have a great week, and I will see you next Saturday.